My wife pointed to the front door and said, "There it is," thinking she had just delivered the ultimate checkmate. What she didn't know was that I had been waiting for exactly those words for months. See, when someone shows you the door, sometimes the best response is to show them exactly who's going to be walking through it. Let me back up and explain how we got to this point. 3 years of marriage had turned into 3 years of daily verbal warfare. Every single conversation became a battlefield where she wielded manipulation like a master swordsman, twisting every word I said into something sinister. The woman I married had morphed into this bipolar tornado who could go from zero to nuclear meltdown faster than I could say good morning. That particular Tuesday started like every other day in our house. I was downstairs having my coffee, scrolling through my phone, when she came charging down the stairs already in full attack mode. No, good morning. No acknowledgement that I existed as a human being. Just pure, unfiltered hostility from the moment her feet hit the kitchen floor. "You left dishes in the sink again," she snapped, slamming cabinet doors for dramatic effect. Here's the thing though, I had washed every dish the night before. The only thing in that sink was the coffee mug I was currently drinking from. "That's just my coffee mug," I said calmly, not even looking up from my phone. "Don't give me that attitude," she fired back, already escalating. "You think you can just make messes and I'll clean up after you like some kind of maid?" This was her specialty. Take a non-issue, blow it completely out of proportion, then make me the villain in her twisted narrative. I had learned to recognize the pattern, but what I hadn't learned yet was how to stop playing along. "I'm not giving you attitude. I'm drinking coffee from a mug that I'll wash when I'm done drinking coffee." But logic had no place in her world. She was already pacing around the kitchen like a caged animal, building up steam for what I knew would be another hour-long screaming session where somehow everything wrong with her life would become my fault. You know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of living with someone who doesn't respect me, doesn't appreciate what I do around here. Her voice was getting higher, more shrill. "Maybe we should just end this whole thing if you're not satisfied." And there it was. The threat she always pulled out when she wanted to watch me scramble, apologize, and beg her to reconsider. The ultimatum designed to make me fold like a cheap suit and promise to be better, do better, try harder. But something was different this time. Maybe it was the fact that she had used this same script so many times that I could recite it from memory. Maybe it was because I had finally reached that point where you realize you're not actually required to participate in someone else's drama. She marched over to the front door, threw it open, and pointed outside with all the theatrical flair of a Broadway performer. "There it is. If you're so unhappy, there's the door." I looked at her standing there, arm extended, face flushed red with manufactured rage, waiting for me to either apologize or storm out in defeat. Instead, I did something that caught both of us completely off guard. I laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a sarcastic chuckle. A genuine, from-the-belly laugh that seemed to confuse her more than if I had started speaking in ancient Greek. "You think this is funny?" she screeched, but I could see the uncertainty creeping into her eyes. "Actually, yeah, I do." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. "You know what? You're absolutely right. There's the door." She was still standing there with her arm pointed outside, but now she looked less like a commanding general and more like someone who had just realized they might have overplayed their hand. I found the number I was looking for and hit call. The phone rang twice before someone picked up. "Allied Moving Services, this is dispatch." "Hi, I need to schedule an emergency same-day move," I said, keeping my voice casual while maintaining eye contact with my wife. Her expression was shifting from anger to confusion to something that looked suspiciously like panic. "What size move are we talking about, sir?" "Oh, not too big. Just personal belongings. Clothes, shoes, some bathroom stuff. Should fit in a small truck." My wife's arm finally dropped to her side. "What are you doing?" she whispered. I held up one finger, indicating I needed to finish my call. "Yeah, the pickup address is." I rattled off our address. "And the delivery address is." I paused, looking directly at her. "Actually, let me call you back with that delivery address in about 10 minutes. "No problem, sir. We can have a crew there within the hour." "Perfect. Thank you." I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my pocket. The kitchen had fallen completely silent except for the sound of her rapid breathing. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "Am I?" I picked up my coffee mug, walked over to the sink, and washed it thoroughly, making sure to dry it, and put it away in the cabinet where it belonged. You pointed to that door and told me there it is. I'm just agreeing with you. That's not what I meant, and you know it. Really? Because it seemed pretty clear to me. You opened the door, pointed outside, and said, there it is, like you were giving me directions. So I figured you must want someone to use that door. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to backtrack without losing face. But I wasn't interested in giving her an exit strategy this time. I think I'll go upstairs and get ready, I said, heading toward the staircase. The moving truck should be here soon. As I walked up the stairs, I could hear her behind me, finally finding her voice again. You can't be serious. You're going to throw away 3 years of marriage over some stupid argument. I stopped at the top of the stairs and looked down at her. I'm not throwing anything away. You show me the door, remember? I'm just finally smart enough to take the hint. I walked into our bedroom and could hear her downstairs, pacing around the kitchen, muttering to herself. She was probably trying to figure out if I was actually serious or just calling her bluff. The beauty of it was, even I wasn't entirely sure which one it was until that moment when I pulled out my phone. But now that I had made the call, something clicked into place. This house, this sanctuary that had become a war zone, was mine. I had bought it 2 years before we even met. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every improvement had come out of my pocket. Yet somehow, over the years, she had started acting like she owned the place. I pulled out a large suitcase from the closet and set it on the bed. Then I opened her dresser drawers and started methodically folding her clothes. T-shirts, jeans, those expensive workout clothes she bought but never used. Each item went neatly into the suitcase like I was packing for a vacation she didn't know she was taking. What are you doing up there? She called from downstairs. Packing, I called back. Finally coming to your senses? I had to bite back a laugh. She still thought this was all about me leaving. The woman who had just spent 20 minutes screaming about how miserable I made her, who had literally pointed me toward the exit, somehow believed she was the one staying put. I moved to her side of the bathroom and started collecting her toiletries. Expensive face creams that promised to reverse aging, about 15 different bottles of shampoo and conditioner, makeup that probably cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. All of it went into a separate bag. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was being more careful with her stuff than she had ever been with mine. I found shirts of mine in her dirty laundry pile, jewelry of mine mixed in with hers, books of mine that she had borrowed and never returned. 3 years of gradually claiming territory in a house that was never hers to claim. I could hear her getting more agitated downstairs. Cabinet doors were slamming again, and she was talking to herself louder now, working herself up into another frenzy. This was her pattern. When manipulation didn't work, she escalated to chaos, hoping the sheer volume of her emotions would overwhelm my logic. My phone buzzed. Allied Moving Services. Hi, this is dispatch calling back. Do you have that delivery address for us now? I had been thinking about this. I knew her mother's address by heart after 3 years of obligatory holiday visits. Yes, it's. I rattled off the address. Perfect. Our crew is about 15 minutes out. Great, thanks. As I hung up, I realized she had gone quiet downstairs. That was never a good sign. Silence meant she was plotting her next move, figuring out how to regain control of the situation. I grabbed another suitcase and continued packing. Her winter coats from the hall closet, the collection of purses that lived in our bedroom, the stack of romance novels she kept on her nightstand. Everything that screamed her in a house that had never really felt like ours. The more I packed, the more I realized how much space her stuff had taken up. Not just physical space, but mental space. I had been walking on eggshells in my own home, constantly monitoring my behavior to avoid triggering her next meltdown. When was the last time I had watched a TV show I actually wanted to watch? When was the last time I had eaten dinner without having to defend myself against some imaginary slight I had committed? Are you really doing this? Her voice was right outside the bedroom door now. Doing what? I asked, not looking up from the suitcase. Packing your stuff to leave. I straightened up and looked at her. She was leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, trying to look defiant, but failing to hide the uncertainty in her eyes. I'm not packing my stuff, I said calmly. This is your stuff. For a moment, she just stared at me like I had spoken in a foreign language. Then the reality of what I was saying started to sink in. My stuff? What do you mean my stuff? I mean your clothes, your shoes, your bathroom products, your books, your stuff. I gestured to the suitcases on the bed. You know, the things that belong to you. You can't just kick me out. This is my house too. And there it was. The assumption that had been driving me crazy for months. Actually, no, it's not. What do you mean it's not? I mean exactly what I said. This house is in my name. The mortgage is in my name. The insurance is in my name. You've never contributed a dime to the mortgage, never paid for repairs, never even paid utilities. I zipped up one suitcase and started on another. So no, this isn't your house too. Her face went through several color changes as this information processed. That's not. You can't just. We're married. Being married doesn't automatically give you ownership of property you didn't buy. I was staying calm, factual, which seemed to be infuriating her more than if I had started yelling back. I've lived here for 3 years. As my guest. A guest who just told me she was tired of living here and pointed me toward the exit. She was getting that wild look in her eyes again, the one that usually preceded her most spectacular meltdowns. You're being ridiculous. I wasn't serious about you leaving, but you were serious about being tired of living with me. You were serious about wanting to end this whole thing. You were serious about pointing to that door. I closed the second suitcase. I'm just taking you seriously. This is insane. You can't do this. Sure I can. It's my house, remember? She stormed back downstairs, and I could hear her starting up another rant, but I wasn't listening to the words anymore. I was listening to the sound of freedom approaching in the form of a moving truck that would be here any minute. I carried the first suitcase downstairs and set it by the front door. The same door she had pointed to less than an hour ago. The same door she had insisted was there for me to use. She saw the suitcase and her voice reached a pitch that probably bothered dogs 3 houses away. You cannot be serious right now. Deadly serious, I said, heading back upstairs for the second suitcase. That's when I heard the sound that made everything perfect. The deep honk of an air horn from a large truck pulling up outside our house. The timing was absolutely perfect. Like the universe had been waiting for exactly this moment to deliver the punchline to the joke my wife had been telling herself for 3 years. She heard the truck horn too, and her head snapped toward the front window. Through the glass, you could see the big white Allied moving truck backing into our driveway, complete with 2 guys in matching uniforms getting out to assess the job. No, she said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. No, no, no. You did not actually call movers. I walked back downstairs carrying the second suitcase, and she was standing there frozen, staring out the window like she was watching an alien spacecraft land in our front yard. Oh, but I did. I set the suitcase down next to the first one. Remember? You told me there was the door. I figured you wanted someone to use it. She whirled around to face me, and I could see the exact moment when the full reality of the situation hit her. Her face went from confused to panicked to absolutely furious in about 2 seconds flat. You cannot do this to me. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm doing something for me. I walked over to the window as one of the movers knocked on the front door. Looks like they're ready to work. I opened the door before she could stop me. 2 guys, both built like they spent their lives moving heavy furniture, stood on my doorstep with clipboards and an attitude that said they'd seen every kind of domestic drama imaginable. You the gentleman who called about the same day move? The taller one asked. That's me. I gestured toward the suitcases. This is everything that needs to go. Behind me, my wife had found her voice again. This is kidnapping. This is illegal. You can't force someone to move. The mover looked past me at her, then back at me with raised eyebrows. Sir, we can't remove anyone from a residence against their will. Oh, she's not being removed against her will, I said calmly. She's the one who told me she was tired of living here. She's the one who said maybe we should end this whole thing. And she's the one who... I turned to look at her with a smile that probably looked way too satisfied. What did you say again? About the door? She was standing there with her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. The mover was looking between us like he was watching a tennis match. She pointed to that door and said, there it is. I explained to the confused mover. So I'm helping her use it. That's when she completely lost it. Not the controlled manipulation rage she usually deployed, but genuine, unhinged panic. I didn't mean it like that, and you know it, she screamed. You're twisting my words. Am I? Because you seemed pretty clear. You opened the door, pointed outside, and said, there it is, like you were giving someone directions to leave. The second mover, who had been silently watching this domestic theater unfold, finally spoke up. Look, folks, we just moved stuff. We don't get involved in family disputes. There's no dispute, I said, grabbing one of the suitcases. These bags need to go to this address. I handed him a piece of paper with her mother's address on it. My wife snatched the paper out of his hands. That's my mother's house. I know. That's where you'll be staying until you figure out your next move. You can't send me to my mother's like I'm some kind of teenager. I'm not sending you anywhere. You're choosing to leave. Remember? You said you were tired of living here. She was spiraling now, trying to grab onto any argument that might save her from the consequences of her own ultimatum. That was just, I was upset. People say things when they're upset. People also do things when they're tired of being manipulated, I replied, carrying her suitcase toward the moving truck. She followed me outside, still ranting. This is my home. I have rights. You have the right to pack your belongings and leave the property that doesn't belong to you, I said, loading her suitcase into the truck. The neighbors were starting to notice the commotion. Mrs. Peterson from next door was pretending to water plants that didn't need watering, and the guy across the street had suddenly developed a deep interest in checking his mailbox for the third time in 10 minutes. My wife noticed the audience too, which made her even more frantic. You're humiliating me in front of the whole neighborhood. You're humiliating yourself. I'm just helping you follow through on your own suggestion. I walked back toward the house to get the second suitcase, and she was right behind me, her voice getting higher and more desperate. Please, can we just talk about this? Can we go inside and discuss this like adults? We did discuss it. You discussed it very thoroughly. You told me you were tired of living with me, that maybe we should end this whole thing, and then you showed me the door. I picked up the second suitcase. I'm just being a good listener. The taller mover was standing by his truck, trying not to look like he was enjoying the show. Is this it, sir? Just the 2 bags. That's it, I confirmed, handing over the second suitcase. Wait. My wife rushed toward the truck like she was trying to stop a departing train. You can't just put my life in 2 suitcases. I was very thorough. I packed everything that belonged to you. What about my kitchen stuff? My decorations? The furniture we bought together. What furniture did we buy together? I asked, genuinely curious. She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it. Because the truth was, everything in the house had been mine before she moved in, or I had bought it after she moved in. She had never contributed to any major purchases, never even offered to split the cost of anything significant. The throw pillows on the couch. $20 pillows from Target don't constitute joint property. The mover cleared his throat. Sir, we've got everything loaded. What's the delivery address again? I repeated her mother's address, and he wrote it down on his clipboard. No, she shouted, making one last desperate grab for control. I'm not going to my mother's house. I'm staying right here. That's when I played my final card. I reached into my pocket and pulled out her spare key to the house. The key I had given her 3 years ago when she moved in. The key she had probably forgotten was technically mine to give and take back. With what key? I asked, holding it up. Her eyes locked onto that key like it was a lifeline on a sinking ship. You can't take my key. It's not your key. It's my key that I let you use. She lunged for it, but I was ready. I stepped back and tossed the key to the taller mover. Would you mind holding on to this for a second? He caught it with a grin. No problem, boss. The word divorce stopped her cold. I watched her face go completely white as the reality of the situation finally penetrated that thick skull of hers. We can see you this afternoon at 2 o'clock, the receptionist said through my phone speaker. Perfect. I'll be there. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my pocket. My wife was staring at me like I had just sprouted a second head. You're filing for divorce? Today. Why wait? You said you were tired of this. You said maybe we should end this whole thing. I'm just following your lead. But I didn't mean. I was just upset. And I'm just tired of being married to someone who gets upset every single day and makes it my problem. The mover with my key was looking back and forth between us like he was watching the final round of a boxing match. His partner had already climbed into the driver's seat and started the engine, clearly ready to get this show on the road. You ready to go, miss? The tall mover asked her. I'm not going anywhere, she shrieked, making one final desperate stand. This is all just a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I said calmly. You want out, you're getting out. You pointed to the door, and now you're going through it. She tried a different approach, her voice suddenly soft and pleading. Honey, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. You made your position very clear. I was emotional. I didn't mean any of it. You mean it every single day? This is just the first time I decided to take you seriously. The desperation in her eyes was almost pitiful, but I had seen this act too many times before. The moment I showed any weakness, any sign that her manipulation was working, she'd be right back to her old tricks within hours. Please, she whispered, don't do this to us. I'm not doing anything to us. There is no us. You made that clear when you told me you were tired of living with me. She tried one more angle. What about our friends? What about our families? What are they going to think? They're going to think you got exactly what you asked for. The mover cleared his throat again. Look, folks, we really need to get moving here. We've got other jobs today. I nodded and walked toward my front door. She's all yours. That's when she completely snapped. The fake sweetness disappeared, and the real her came roaring back to the surface. You bastard. You can't do this to me. I'll take you for everything you've got. With what lawyer? I asked, stopping at the door. You don't have a job, remember? You don't have any money of your own. And since this house is mine, and the car you drive is mine, and the credit cards you use are mine, I'm curious how you plan to finance this legal battle you're threatening. Her mouth opened and closed several times as she processed this information. In her rage-fueled fantasy world, she had forgotten that she had made herself completely financially dependent on me. I'll get a job. I'll figure it out. Good for you. That sounds like a great fresh start. I stepped inside my house, and she tried to follow me, but I blocked the doorway with my body. Where do you think you're going? This is my house, too. No, it's not. We've been through this. I held out my hand to the mover. Can I get my key back now? He tossed it to me with a grin. All yours, boss. I stepped back inside and started to close the door, but she shoved her foot in the gap. You cannot lock me out of my own home. It's not your home. It never was your home. It was my home that I let you live in. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent, but apparently you're going to waive that one. I looked down at her foot in my doorway. Move your foot. No, move your foot, or I'll move it for you. Something in my voice must have convinced her I wasn't bluffing, because she pulled her foot back. The moment she did, I closed the door firmly and turned the deadbolt. She immediately started pounding on the door. Open this door. You can't lock me out. I walked to the front window and pulled back the curtain just enough to see her standing on my porch, red-faced and furious, pounding on the door like a crazy person. Ma'am, I heard the mover say, your ride is leaving in about 30 seconds whether you're in it or not. She spun around to look at the truck, then back at the door, then at the truck again. I could see her trying to calculate her options and coming up with exactly 0. She pounded on the door one more time. This isn't over. Do you hear me? This isn't over. Actually, I called through the door. It is. I heard her storm down the front steps, muttering curses that would have made a sailor proud. The truck door slammed, and a few seconds later, I heard the engine pull away from my driveway. For the first time in 3 years, my house was completely silent. No yelling, no drama, no one stomping around looking for something to be offended about. Just blessed, beautiful silence. I walked back to the window and watched the moving truck disappear around the corner, carrying my biggest mistake to her mother's house, where she belonged. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from her, of course. I'm calling my lawyer. I texted back. Good luck with that. Make sure to mention that you pointed to the door first. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, another message came through. I hate you. I typed back. I know. That's why you're in a moving truck instead of my living room. The dots appeared one more time, then stopped. No more messages came through. I looked around my house, my sanctuary that had been turned into a battlefield for 3 years, and realized something profound had just happened. I had won. Not by fighting, not by screaming, not by playing her manipulation games. I had won by simply taking her at her word and giving her exactly what she asked for. The first thing I noticed was how quiet my house actually was without her constant noise. No stomping around upstairs, no cabinet doors slamming, no muttering under her breath about imaginary problems I had supposedly created. Just pure, uninterrupted peace. I walked through each room like I was seeing it for the first time in years. The living room where I could now sit in my own chair without being interrogated about my day. The kitchen where I could make coffee without triggering a 20-minute lecture about dishes. The bedroom where I wouldn't have to sleep next to someone who treated me like an enemy. My phone had been buzzing nonstop for the first hour, but I let it go to voicemail. Text after text from her, each one more desperate than the last. The messages started angry, then turned pleading, then cycled back to threats, then back to begging. Classic manipulation playbook, and I had seen every page of it before. Finally, I decided to read through the collection of messages she had sent. You can't be serious about this. Please call me back, we need to talk. This is insane, you're ruining our marriage over nothing. I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean what I said. You're being completely unreasonable. My mother is asking questions, what am I supposed to tell her? Answer your phone now. Fine, ignore me, see how that works out for you. I deleted every single message without responding. Then I blocked her number. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into Jenkins and Associates wearing my best shirt and carrying a folder of documents I had spent the morning gathering. Marriage certificate, house deed, bank statements, car registration. Everything that proved what belonged to me and what didn't. The lawyer was a sharp-looking woman in her 50s who had probably seen every variety of divorce drama imaginable. She listened while I explained the situation, occasionally nodding or making notes. So let me make sure I understand, she said when I finished. She demanded you leave your own house. You called her bluff, and she's now claiming she didn't mean it? That's the short version, yeah. And the house is solely in your name? Bought it 2 years before we met. She's never made a payment, never contributed to repairs or improvements. Any joint bank accounts? She has a debit card on my account, but her name isn't on anything. Children? No. Any significant assets she brought into the marriage? I thought about that for a minute. A 10-year-old Honda Civic that died 6 months after she moved in. She smiled. This should be fairly straightforward then. In this state, property owned before marriage generally stays with the original owner unless there's evidence of intent to share ownership. Did you ever add her name to the house deed? Never even considered it. Good. Any reason to think she might contest the divorce? She's already threatening to take me for everything I've got, but she doesn't have money for a lawyer. They usually find a way if they're determined enough. But based on what you've told me, she doesn't have much ground to stand on. I left the lawyer's office feeling better than I had in months. Maybe years. The paperwork would be filed within the week, and barring any complications, I could be legally free within 60 days. When I got home, there was a car I didn't recognize sitting in my driveway. My heart sank for a moment, thinking she had somehow managed to get back. But as I got closer, I saw it was her mother behind the wheel. Great. Round 2 was about to begin. I parked on the street and walked toward my front door, ignoring the older woman who was now getting out of her car with a determined look on her face. We need to talk, she called after me. I turned around. No, we really don't. You can't just throw my daughter out on the street like garbage. I didn't throw her out on the street. I had her professionally moved to your house. Big difference. She's devastated. She's been crying for hours. She should have thought about that before she pointed me toward the door. She didn't mean it that way, and you know it. This was getting old fast. Actually, I don't know that. What I know is that she said she was tired of living with me, suggested we end our marriage, and then showed me the exit. I took her at her word. People say things when they're upset, and people do things when they're tired of being treated like garbage in their own home. Her mother crossed her arms, trying to look intimidating. It might have worked if I hadn't just spent 3 years dealing with someone who had learned all her manipulation techniques from this woman. She wants to come home. This isn't her home. It never was. You're married. That makes it her home too. Being married to someone doesn't give you ownership of property you didn't pay for. That's not how marriage works. Apparently, it's not how this marriage worked either, since we're getting divorced. That stopped her cold. Divorced? Filed the paperwork this afternoon. You can't be serious. Everyone keeps saying that, but here we are. She stood there for a moment, probably trying to figure out a different angle of attack. What if she promises to change? What if she goes to counseling? What if she doesn't? What if this is just another manipulation to get back in so she can resume making my life miserable? You don't know that would happen. I know it's happened every other time she's apologized for her behavior. Marriage is about forgiveness. Marriage is also supposed to be about respect and partnership and not treating your spouse like an enemy you live with. I could see her getting frustrated that her usual guilt tactics weren't working. Fine, but you can't just keep her stuff hostage. What stuff? I packed everything that belonged to her and had it delivered to your house. What about her furniture? Her dishes? What furniture? What dishes? She moved in with a suitcase and a dying car. Everything in that house was mine before she got there. That's impossible. People accumulate things together. People who contribute to a household accumulate things together. People who just consume what someone else provides don't get to claim ownership. I could see her cycling through the same stages her daughter had gone through. Disbelief, anger, bargaining, more anger. This is cold, she finally said. This is heartless. You know what's cold? Living with someone who treats every day like a battle. You know what's heartless? Pointing to the door and telling someone to leave their own house. I walked toward my front door, done with this conversation. She loves you. Her mother called after me. I stopped and turned around. No, she doesn't. She loves what I provide. She loves having someone to blame for everything wrong in her life. She loves having a target for her daily rage. But love, real love, people who love you don't try to kick you out of your own house. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone also faces consequences for their mistakes. Today she learned that some words can't be taken back. I unlocked my front door and stepped inside, leaving her standing in my driveway. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car for about 10 more minutes, probably calling her daughter to report that the guilt trip had failed. Eventually, she drove away, and I was alone again in my peaceful house. That night, I ordered pizza from my favorite place. The one she had always complained was too greasy. I watched an action movie she would have criticized as mindless. I went to bed at a reasonable hour without anyone starting a fight about something I had supposedly done wrong. For the first time in 3 years, I slept through the entire night without being woken up by drama, accusations, or manufactured emergencies. It was the best sleep I'd had since the day I said I do. 62 days. That's how long it took to officially end what should have never begun in the first place. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, stamped and official. 3 years of marriage dissolved with the stroke of a judge's pen, and somehow the sun still came up the next day. She had tried to contest it, of course. Found some bottom-feeder lawyer willing to work on contingency, probably thinking he could squeeze some money out of me. But when faced with the reality that everything significant was in my name, purchased before or during the marriage with my money, even he advised her to sign the papers. The house remained mine. The car remained mine. The bank accounts remained mine. She walked away with exactly what she had brought into the marriage, nothing but her clothes and her attitude. Her final attempt at manipulation came through her mother, naturally. A tearful phone call about how sorry she was, how she had learned her lesson, how she would do anything to make it work. But I had learned something important during those 2 months of blessed silence. Some doors, once closed, should never be reopened. Tell her I said thanks. I told her mother during what would be our last conversation. Thanks for what? For showing me the door. Best advice anyone ever gave me, even if she didn't mean it that way. The house felt bigger somehow after everything was finalized. Not just physically, but spiritually. Like someone had lifted a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying. I could walk through my own home without wondering what imaginary slight would trigger the next explosion. I started doing things I had forgotten I enjoyed. Watched entire football games without someone complaining about the noise. Cooked meals I actually wanted to eat instead of whatever wouldn't cause an argument. Had friends over without worrying about what mood she might be in. The neighbors noticed the change too. Mrs. Peterson mentioned that she hadn't heard any shouting from my house in months. Whatever you two worked out, she said. It's made the whole street more peaceful. We worked out that she needed to live somewhere else, I told her. 3 months after the divorce was final, I ran into one of her friends at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, like she wasn't sure whose side she was supposed to be on. How are you doing? She asked carefully. Better than I've been in years, I answered honestly. And how's she doing? I wouldn't know. That's the beautiful thing about divorce. Her problems aren't my problems anymore. She's been telling people you kicked her out over a stupid argument. I had to laugh at that. She pointed to the door and told me there it is. I just agreed with her. That's not how she tells it. I'm sure it's not. But the truth doesn't change based on how someone wants to remember it. Standing in my kitchen that evening, looking out at the yard I no longer had to share with someone who resented my existence, I realized something profound had happened that day. She pointed to the door. She had thought she was threatening me with loss. What she actually did was offer me freedom. Some people spend years in therapy trying to figure out how to set boundaries, how to stand up for themselves, how to stop accepting treatment they don't deserve. All it took for me was one moment of clarity when someone finally pushed too far. The best part? She did all the work for me, pointed right to the solution, and demanded I take it. I never did thank her properly for that. But then again, I doubt she would appreciate the irony. These days, when people ask me about the divorce, I tell them the truth. My ex-wife gave me the best advice of my life when she showed me the door. I just took it more literally than she expected.